We recap the Steve Clifford press conference, the spectacle that was held over at the Spectrum Center, and we take Mitch Kupchak's comments and dissect what he meant about Miles Bridges. It is as good as done that Miles is coming back to the Charlotte Hornets. We talk about all of that today on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
We're Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's the Locked On Hornets podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. This episode is brought to you by Arcade 1-Up. Locked On Hornets is partnering with Arcade 1-Up to give away 3 free NBA Jam Shack machines. That's right. We're giving them away 3 at a time. These are the guys known for making the incredible retro 3/4 scale at-home arcade games like Pac-Man, Golden Tee, and many more. Enter to win on arcade1up.com/lockedon. That's arcade1up.com/lockedon for your chance to win one of those machines. Thanks for making Locked On Hornets your first listen every day. We're free. We're available anywhere you get your podcasts. That includes YouTube, so you can watch us be foolish on this show. I'm Walker Mail, been covering Charlotte sports for a while. Doug Branson is the founder of the podcast, and here we are recapping a Steve Clifford press conference, Doug, that I thought was the most big-time put-on media event that we've had in Spectrum Center. Like, as far as a press conference goes, right? Like, you know, James Borrego, when he was introduced, we had it in the normal media room. He spoke to, it was very much so the normal process. But this, the welcoming home party for Steve Clifford, it's held in the main lobby. You had your first 2 rows reserved for media members. You had 3-4 rows behind that ready for all of the employees that worked at the Spectrum Center, any like employee or member of the actual Charlotte Hornets, right? Whether you're an usher, just a big welcoming, Steve Clifford party. There were cupcakes afterwards. I saw a great question on Twitter asking me what kind of cupcakes they were. They were team colored frosting, vanilla cake. Looked good.
It's important information you're sharing here.
Yes, this is all what took place.
Steve Clifford party. I can't wait for Charlotte, some of the Charlotte schools, Independence, to throw a Steve Clifford themed prom next year.
I mean, Steve Martin was there, Hornets legend.
Comedian?
Yeah, Steve Martin was there, man.
Oh,
absolutely.
The other Steve Martin.
No, not the comedian. Although that would have been great. It would have been excellent. I should have put that out there and not clarified. But Steve Martin, the legend, was in attendance. I mean, yeah, man, crazy. And I guess now, look, I wanted to give you guys the most important information on the cupcakes. But now I guess we'll kind of talk about what Steve Clifford had to say. It's ultimately going to come down to the LaMelo Ball, right? Like, that's the thing everybody wants to know. The casual Hornets fan wants to know how this revolves around LaMelo.
I think not even the casuals, the hardcores. I think all Hornets fans understand that this is all about LaMelo.
And he talked about predicating his offense around what his best players do best. And LaMelo clearly thrived in transition, thrives in a high-pace offense, which has not been a fast-paced offense, which has not been something that Clifford has been known for over his tenure as the head coach with Charlotte or with Orlando. But he did say he didn't want to change it all that much, Doug. Like, that was the second question asked by Scott Fowler of the Charlotte Observer in the press conference, because it's pretty damn pressing. And here he is saying we don't want to change all that much because of how well the offense performed last year. And then I asked him about the superstar relationships that he's developed in the past and what he can take away. Here's that sound bite over at the Spectrum Center that I asked him yesterday. Walker Mail from Locked On Hornets. Coach, you've been around superstars before, Dwight Howard, Tracy McGrady, the Rockets, quite a few times. How do you bring what you've learned with your relationships with those kinds of players, maybe apply it to a LaMelo Ball or somebody that is viewed as that here in the city of Charlotte?
I mean, share experiences, a thing I've seen. I think it also, when you're around those caliber players, I mean, this past year doing a consulting thing with Brooklyn is, as much as I guess players are different now than before, being around a guy like Kevin Durant for the year just reinforced to me that the best players do want to be coached, and the best players do work hard every day. and the best players do care about the team. Kevin was a breath of fresh air. He may be the best player in the world, and nobody works harder. Nobody cares more about his teammates. So things like that, certainly, I can share with the players. So I think all those experiences, they give you perspective on what you can expect from players, and they give you whatever stories that you can share that hopefully will help them with clarity of their vision of how they want to work every day.
Here's my question, Doug. We've talked about LaMelo, the kind of credibility that he might take away from his head coach when we were going through this process. How much cred, how much validation does whatever the head coach who that was going to be, how much do they need in order to get their message through to a player like LaMelo, to Miles Bridges, to really anybody on the roster? Do those stories surrounding Dwight Howard, Tracy McGrady, or that one you just heard about Kevin Durant, where Steve is just in awe being around him last year as a consultant with Brooklyn, when LaMelo asked Steve some questions, or maybe if Steve is just offering it up because he's a coach and that's going to happen, he's going to offer up coaching to LaMelo. Do you think that those relationships, that those experiences that Steve has developed before him are going to resonate with one young LaMelo Ball?
I think so. I mean, I think it's credibility. He's worked with some of the best players. It's community. These players all talk to one another. And LaMelo Ball, I think he's due to go to the All-Star weekend again. He's going to get I'm sure he made a lot of friends over the past All-Star weekend and his rise up through into the NBA. So these players all talk to one another. I'm sure it would be easy for LaMelo to get some intel on what he's in for with Clifford, and that's either going to be good or bad for that relationship. But ultimately, it does come down to communication between Clifford and LaMelo Ball. And I think Clifford was good to be careful on, he's literally just gotten there, and a few people asked about LaMelo, and he's still trying to get his feet on the ground. But I think ultimately Clifford understands, as he said, that you tailor the offense, you tailor the team around the best players, and LaMelo is unquestionably one of, if not the best player on this roster right now. And so I think he's going to act accordingly. The big question, Walker, is pace of play. It was mentioned in the press release that Mitch Kupchak let out when they decided to hire Steve Clifford. And it's on people's mind. Will Clifford be able to adjust to the new pace of play? I was looking at his days in Orlando, and certainly Orlando started in the bottom, like 24th, 26th in pace. But by the end of his tenure in that last year in Orlando, the team was, 17th in pace. You have to remember, too, that the Hornets were also a very poor paced team until last season when they jumped to 5th in the league. They were at the bottom of the league, too. So I think Clifford understands that it's all about personnel. LaMelo allows this team to play like that in transition. And I don't really think he's going to have any problem making sure that this team is running fast.
Well, and that was the second question asked in the press conference, was how do you adapt your offense to LaMelo when we haven't seen that type of offense from Steve Clifford before? But you are right. He is saying the right things. And I feel like through the NFL and through the NBA, those sports in particular, I think what I want to hear from the coach the most is, are you such a dictator that you want your players to adhere to your coaching, to what you have in mind, or are you going to dictate your coaching to what the players do best? That's always the number one thing fans want to hear, whether it be football, whether it be basketball. And so he passes that test. And ultimately that test comes in the introduction press conference for either of those sports. So he's saying the right things. I do think there's some element of this too, Doug, where LaMelo's almost pace proof, if you will. Right. If you have LaMelo as your point guard, your offense is going to be speedier than without LaMelo. And I just don't know. You would have to try pretty hard as a coach to take that away, especially with LaMelo on the floor. Now, if you go to your backup point guard and your pace it goes down a little bit, fine. But when you have LaMelo out there, it's going to be moving. That ball's going to be moving, and guys have to be ready for that basketball, or it's going to hit them in the face if they're not paying attention.
Well, and so where I think, Clifford can look to like improve, if he wants to improve this offense. I mean, it was already a pretty good offense. It could be even better if some of the decision making when they do get into the half court gets a little better. And I think that's where Clifford can install some principles and work on a few things that can improve that. But again, and here's the thing: if he comes in and he completely changes it and slows the team down, well, the team has a team option on his contract. If they don't feel like it's working, then the Hornets have an out. And I think Clifford understands that too. Like, there is an out. So if he doesn't, perform in the way that they've discussed previously, then that's an option. So I think I've never seen Steve Clifford I've never perceived him as someone that was ego first. I always perceived him as somebody that was focused on winning, but also confident that he understood how to win in the NBA as it's presently constructed, not as it was constructed when he was assistant coaching at Houston or New York. I think he's somebody that studies the game as it was and as it's transforming. He recognizes that the game has changed. And so we'll just have to see how it all plays out next season.
I don't want to promote this because it's promoting something unhealthy, and ultimately the amount that you sleep doesn't necessarily indicate how much you work. But we can all remember when Steve Clifford went through that health scare. I think, was it his last year or maybe his second to last year here with the Hornets, right, where he wasn't getting enough rest, he wasn't getting enough sleep, and some medical official told him, dude, you have to call it quits for a while. Like, you cannot be at Spectrum Center doing all of this. In fact, you can't even be on the court. You need to take a break, and you need to go ahead and hand the keys over to Steve and Silas, at least for a brief moment in time, because what you've done is you've run yourself down. I don't want to promote that because it means, hey, work as hard as Steve Clifford and put your health in jeopardy by doing so. That's not what it means, but it does go to show just how crazy that dude is about understanding the game. And so much so where it hurt him. Like, it actually, not only it literally hurt him, and quite literally it hurt his health. Hopefully that's all figured out. But yeah, I think it kind of goes to show the kind of guy that Steve Clifford is.
I think when you dig into who Steve Clifford is as a coach and what his principles are and his ability to adapt there's obviously some things that you can point out. The trouble that he had with Malik Monk, and people have spoken about his relationship with Mo Bamba. We need to get some more details on that and see exactly what the story is there. But there are some things to be concerned about. But I think what most people are really concerned about when it comes to Steve Clifford, it has nothing really to do with Steve Clifford or who he is or how he coaches. It's this process, Walker. And we learned a little bit more about that process in this press conference. Yeah.
Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast, we're going to talk more about that process, but also we have Miles Bridges updates from Jake Fisher and Mitch Kupchak that we heard yesterday. That's next on Locked On Hornets, but not before we talk about Sakara. Looking and feeling your best shouldn't mean deprivation. Instead, choose joy and abundance. Sakara's organic, plant-rich, transformational nutrition programs are designed to help you cultivate body intelligence so you can nourish your body and experience the results that you want. Sakara is a wellness company anchored in food as medicine on a mission to nourish your body through the power of plants. Their nutritionally designed, chef-crafted breakfasts, lunch, and dinners are made with powerful plant-rich ingredients, helping boost your energy support, your digestion, curb your sugar cravings, and get your skin glowing. Plus, it's also delivered right to your door, ready to eat. And right now, Sakara is offering our listeners 20% off their first order when they go to sakara.com/lockedon20 or enter code lockedon20 at checkout. That's Sakara, SAKARA.com/lockedon20 to get 20% off your first order. Sakara.com/lockedon20. Let's talk Mitch Kupchak and Miles Bridges updates and go a little more into the process coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
This is Locked On Hornets.
Now that we have this question, I feel like I need to ask this. Mm-hmm. Are y'all sweet potato pie folks or you pumpkin pie folks?
Pumpkin pie folks.
Sweet potato folk.
Pumpkin pie.
Sweet potato.
It's time for more of the Locked On Hornets podcast.
One thing we need to talk about, Doug, is the video that was released on Twitter by our teammate, Nick Carboni, a part of Tegna over at WCNC, where Steve Clifford, as soon as the press conference is done, he leaves. Is it stage left if you're a fan watching the stage, or is it stage left as in your left, right? Because it's stage left from the fan's point of view. It's stage right from the actor's point of view.
So stage is from the actor's point of view. So stage right would be the right if you were the actor. Anyway, what is this
You're
video?
A theater major.
I haven't seen
That's
this
why
video.
I asked.
What is this video?
So he exits stage right and runs. Like, he does this hybrid.
Is this on his Twitter account?
This is on Nick Carboni's Twitter account. Are you going to try to bring it up for the YouTubers?
WCNC. Okay, let me look this up.
So just to set people up and also stall while you get this video, he exits stage right, as we just recently learned, and kind of does this hybrid jog run and then shakes the hand of somebody. We can't. Yeah, here it is if you're on YouTube.
All right.
That's
a good little trot. I mean,
Look at this. That's the run you do if somebody opens the door up for you a little further away than they should, and then you feel awkward, so you have to run, kind of jog, in order to let their good deed go noticed.
All right, we're going to have a debate here on the show. We're going to embrace debate because I don't think that's the kind of run you do when somebody holds the door open and you have to awkwardly get there in time. I think that's the run you do when, a little bathroom break is sneaking up on you. You've had to answer a bunch of questions about LaMelo Ball and whatever, and all you can think about, you're answering questions about your number one player, and all you can think about is number two.
But he goes to shake the hand of somebody. It looks like he is on a pursuit. He saw somebody from the crowd, and then before they left, he wanted to go say hello to them before they left.
Yeah, you are misreading this Zapruder film. This is a pooper film.
No, it's not this is not
the Zapruder film. It's not. It's the Zapooper film. No, this is him. He sees someone. He's like, all right, I got to shake this guy's hand. I know this guy. Okay. Hey, how you going, buddy? Hey, anyway, got to go. But I've been in that situation plenty of times. You got to go to the bathroom. You're in a public situation. Someone sees you. Hey, Doug, how's it going? Oh, pretty good, man. Anyway, I got to go.
Are you covering your backside with the other hand and then shaking the person's hand with your other one? Steve Clifford then exits behind the scene, though, too. Like, he actually goes back to the stage. I believe I saw this. He goes back to the stage and then goes behind the curtains where
what's behind the curtain.
Is it? I would hope it's not right there. I mean,
well, not right behind the curtain, but they don't,
I'm saying that's the awkward trot. I don't know. Yeah, poor Steve, man. I hope he didn't have stomach problems. I will say at the beginning of the press conference, he went for water immediately and then started choking. And I thought we were going to have one of those awkward situations where it went down the wrong pipe and that he was going to be coughing during Mitch Kupchak's opening statement. I was like, oh no, this is not going to go well. The mics weren't off, but at least we got it all figured out. And it was quite the event over.
I'll put it on the YouTube. I'm trying to do a poll a day. I don't know if we're going to give it a name, the Queen City question of the day. I don't know if we want to just go like full radio with it, but I do want to start putting up a YouTube poll for each show. So we can put it on the poll. Was that the trot that you do when someone is holding the door open for you and you awkwardly have to get there in time? Mm-hmm. Or is it the trot that you do when you got to do the thing that we all do?
Yeah. The problem is people are going to choose poop 10 times out of 10. It's funny. Poop is always funny. I don't care how old you are. I mean, that's what's going to happen.
I can update you on the previous poll. Does everyone like length?
Well, the comments are great because this is why. Thank you to our listeners who say pause to this. They're like, wait, what do you mean? What do you mean?
Yeah, is that a thing? Is that a you're more hip with the kids than I saw that too. People,
it's not slang. It's just pause. You don't have to be hip to understand where this is going. This is not. What do those kids mean? What is this abbreviation?
Like pause.
Mean?
I mean, I sort of assumed what they were getting at there, but
pause means wait. Hold up.
88% of people who voted says everyone loves length. 12% of people said no.
I hope everybody.
Anyway, Miles Bridges updates. Okay.
Yeah, Miles Bridges updates. Mitch Kupchak. We have the sound clip, I believe, to this too, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So Will Kunkel sitting right beside me. Shout out to Will Kunkel, part of CSL on Queen City News. He asked the question about the Miles Bridges restricted free agency. Right. It's going to be taking place tomorrow when we start to get some of these actual decisions coming in. Here's Mitch Kupchak talking about the Michigan State product.
Yeah, we love Miles. Okay, and we're going to bring him back. He's been great for the franchise, and I believe with his work ethic, he's only going to get better.
I mean, flat out told you that they're going to bring him back. Here's the actual question we should be asking, because I think a lot of people, when they heard this comment, were dunking on anybody who thought there's a shot that he could go to a different franchise. That this is the actual story we should take as evidence that there's no way they let him slip from their grip. And that's fine. I will say, do we think Mitch Kupchak meant to say it? I do think they're going to bring him back. Do we think Mitch Kupchak meant to say it to the media, or did he feel backed in a corner with all of these people in attendance saying, we're going to bring him back?
Well, listen, I don't think after they fired James Borrego after giving him a playoff mandate and then coming back and saying, well, we might have gotten ahead of ourselves on the playoff mandate, and then hiring a coach, but then that coach doesn't become the coach. I would just say that I'm in wait and see mode on everything at this point. I believe that they absolutely want to bring Miles Bridges back. But until they do it, I'm still of the mind that anything can happen at this point.
I will say, even if he didn't mean to say it, I do think they feel it. I do think it's going to happen.
Sure. Well, you can feel you can feel all kinds of things. It doesn't mean you're going to absolutely do them if somebody comes along and offers Miles Bridges the max.
Yeah. That's true. I still think they would do it, but you're right. Like, that's when it gets dicey. And Jake Fisher, first of all, we've mentioned Jake Fisher so many times on this podcast, and we continue. We have to make him into a segment. We have to create his own soundbite or something. Like, can we create a segment, the fish fry, and cook up some hot takes with whatever?
Going fishing?
Yep, going fishing. That's good. Like,
little reel sound.
We can create something here. I want to do that because he's.
I got a big one.
There you go. All right. I'll let you determine the size. I'll let you the Delisle scale. See, I've been fishing before. Bring out the Delisle scale. I think that's right. Let's measure.
You far surpassed my fishing knowledge. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Let's try to evaluate the weight of what this report is from Jake Fisher. Why that accent? You are from Gastonia. You've seen these people fish before. You're fishing.
My fishing days were in Rowan County.
Dude, you're not fishing in Lake Norman with that accent, right? Like, you're fishing in Lake Hickory. Like, you're going to Catawba County and you're fishing in that body water. Anyways, the Pacers have mulled over making Miles Bridges an offer, sources told Bleacher Report, but it's unclear whether Indiana will actually be willing to add such an expensive piece into their rebuild. League executives have long painted Memphis as a sleeper candidate to make a bid for Bridges, where he could join his Spartans teammate Jaren Jackson Jr. However, that rumored Grizzlies interest has been repeatedly shot down by league figures with knowledge of the situation. All of this coming from Jake Fisher of Bleacher Report. So Memphis, interesting to hear that was a rumor, but he kind of dispels any of that in the last sentence of that paragraph. Indiana feels like they are, quote unquote, a real suitor for Miles. What did you make of Indiana specifically with their mention here?
Yeah, Memphis is a no-go. Indiana maybe, but then again, what are they doing? Are they trying to?
I don't know.
Trying to get better? Maybe they don't know. It's just similar to Charlotte. Like, what are they doing? It just seems there are a couple of teams in the league right now kind of confused. And then going back to Detroit, all of a sudden they trade with the Knicks and get Nerlens Noel and Alec Burks. They just took up $20 million on their cap sheet to bring both of those players in. They extended the qualifying offer to Marvin Bagley, who's a restricted free agent. Are they going to match whatever comes back for him? So all of a sudden, Detroit cap space is getting shrunk. So
yeah,
I'm less and less concerned that Miles is going to get a max offer sheet at this point.
That's right, because we talked about San Antonio. Looks like they might be getting rid of some of their dominant pieces or some of the pieces that they want going forward. The DeJounte Murray trade has been discussed.
Pirtle? Can they pull Pirtle away? Can Charlotte pull Pirtle away from San Antonio? It seems like it's there for the taking.
Yeah, it feels like that possibly could happen. But Miles Bridges, we were never too scared about San Antonio. I didn't think it was going to happen with Detroit. I did think that they were a legitimate problem as far as putting the price tag up for Miles, but they did just make this trade. It does seem now that they're using their salary cap space as a dumping ground while also bringing on assets, which is a smart move. Troy Weaver doing a good job, I think, going by that philosophy. And you've had a nice young core in place now with Jalen Duren, Jaden Ivey, of course, Cade Cunningham being the number 1 overall pick. So it seems like those two teams are going away. I do know the history of the Indiana Pacers a lot more than maybe the common Charlotte Hornets fan, because my family is all from Indiana. You know, the introduction to basketball was the 2000 finals for me. And one thing I do know about Herb Simon, the owner of Indiana, is that dude has avoided tanking at all costs. So it would make sense that this Indiana Pacers team would rather stay afloat, not tank whatsoever, and still get some talent in if they're trading for, or if they're trading away Malcolm Brogdon. You know, the thing is, Indiana, they've done some really nice things over the years to stay afloat, right? Like just because they refuse to tank because they don't want to sacrifice any money, they've still made some really good decisions. I think the Sabonis trade was an excellent decision from them, getting back Tyrese Halliburton. That was fantastic. You know, if they can get the right value in return for Miles Turner, they just might do that. Malcolm Brogdon, same thing. But when we're asking what are they doing, where the Spurs were saying they just might be trying to get rid of their talent and rebuild from the ground up, Indiana has not given us evidence whatsoever that they want to build from the ground up, which ultimately leads me to believe that they actually are a real suitor for Miles, or at least they have that potential. Maybe they don't make that offer, but they fit the profile that would go after a Miles Bridges based on what they've done in the past.
Well, and it goes back to what the Mitch Kupchak said. We're going to bring him back. If you wanted to make a signal to a Detroit or an Indiana that no matter what you do, we're going to bring this player back, that could discourage those teams from even putting in a max offer. Why? Because as we found out when Charlotte made their offer to Gordon Hayward, Utah completely ran out the clock on the amount of time that they had to match Charlotte's offer for Gordon Hayward the first time, they went through this process with Gordon Hayward. Okay. And that prevented Charlotte from then maybe missing out, or prevented them from getting back into the free agency pool to make other moves. So if Detroit has a game plan, if Indiana has a game plan to get better that involves not only acquiring Miles, but maybe also doing a few other things, then they, maybe Mitch is trying to scare them off by saying, don't even bother to put in this offer because we're going to match. And not only are we going to match, we're going to take as much time as possible keeping you off the market.
Yeah. The other thing from Jake Fisher about Miles Bridges was also this, though, quote, Charlotte also signaled it will match any offer for Bridges. So any interested suitor would be incentivized to throw the 24-year-old forward his $173 max, right? So kind of going against what you were discussing, saying you might be incentivized.
$173 million.
Yeah. So when you're talking about the Hornets saying we're going to match anything, say, okay, are you going to match this max contract? We're going to hurt your payroll that much more, right? And so if an offer sheet never comes, Charlotte will be in a pretty position to bring Bridges back under $30 million annually. And so maybe it all works out for Charlotte, and Miles just says, all right, I couldn't get my max. I do want to stay here in Charlotte. Still going to get a lot of money. This is what we settle on. Boom, we got Miles locked in for the near future, and we'll see what happens as the years go along. So we'll see. Yeah, that Pistons trade, though, that was pretty interesting yesterday. It does look like they are using their salary cap space as a dumping ground. All right.
Go ahead, because we're going to talk about Bookknight, this news that we got, but really quickly, what were your thoughts on the process, the questions about the process for Steve Clifford?
It
happened very, even they confirmed that it was a quick process to say the least.
Well, it was kind of weird. I think Mitch Kupchak did an excellent job of dodging the question by going into this elaborate apartment story, which then became the story.
Not fooling me, buddy.
Over the process. I know, but it's like, that's what took place. And then we started asking about everything. So Mitch Kupchak, for those that didn't watch it, they're asked about the process, right? How in the world is Steve Clifford the head coach of the Charlotte Hornets again after you fired him? After Mitch Kupchak was the guy that was announced the general manager, and he's the one that fired him. Said, well, weirdly enough, all those years ago, me and Steve actually went to dinner. I think it was a couple of nights after they had come to the decision to fire Steve Clifford. And Steve gave his apartment to Mitch Kupchak. And so that's where Kupchak has been living over the last 4 years. And then he went into this joke about part of the negotiations coming back to Charlotte was that he couldn't ask for his apartment back, that I was going to keep it. So everybody's starting to laugh, haha, like it. And it's a funny story. Like it's kind of.
I don't know. I'm going to challenge you on that. I don't think it's a funny story. I think it's a bunch of old guys talking about Charlotte real estate. It's not. It wasn't funny. People were laughing because you don't want to not laugh at Mitch Kupchak's story.
It's funny in the sense that it's unusual. I got it. It's unusual. And then Scott Fowler asked about the apartment a little bit more so at the end.
Give it a rest. Who cares about the apartment? Just tell us why you hired Steve Clifford.
I will. The information that we got. You're the angry fan. We just stop.
I'm just tired of talking about Charlotte real estate. Who gives a darn?
So when we actually got to the information, Mitch Kupchak indicated that Steve Clifford's name was mentioned early in the process. Okay. He said that it might have been his fault.
Don't buy it.
He said that it was his fault, that maybe Steve Clifford wasn't a real candidate. Like he was kind of alluding to that as he was discussing how this process played out. But Michael Jordan might have mentioned his name, and they just decided to go in a different direction. He did say that one quality they were looking for as time unfolded was they wanted their guy to have had head coaching experience. That was evident with Kenny Atkinson, certainly Mike D'Antoni, Terry Stotts, right, when we had his name in there for a little bit. Then Steve Clifford certainly fits that category. And in the end, when Kenny Atkinson backs out, well, we're just going to pivot back to Steve Clifford, and he's going to be the head coach, and we're going to have a couple of team option years for the first two on that contract. That's how they said the process played out. I don't like, even if his name was mentioned, it couldn't have been so serious where they really considered hiring him early on until the pool started to dry up. That's my take on it.
Yeah, if you believe that Steve Clifford's name was mentioned early in this process in a serious way, then I have an apartment that Mitch Kupchak will sell you in Uptown Charlotte.
Or not. No, he's keeping it. He's not selling you that apartment.
I think it was obvious that they had a former relationship, that MJ and Clifford and Kupchak and Clifford had a relationship. It was a comfortable name. It was somebody that they could rebound, save face with, sell to people. Hey, this guy had some success previously, can have some success. We have a better roster. That was something that Clifford said. Obviously, this roster that they have now, just in terms of talent, youth, future prospects, potential, is better than even the one that they took to the playoffs. It's just about realizing that potential, internally improving. But yeah, this process was messy. Look, Kupchak didn't want to admit that. He didn't want to admit that in the press conference. He was sort of deflecting a little bit of the fact that the Kenny Atkinson thing was anything less than embarrassing. But it was, and I don't know. It was,
But we talked about it then. But hold on one second, though. We did talk about it then, that this was Kenny Atkinson's fault for the most part until the assistant coaches thing came out, and that was what gave us maybe some criticism of the Charlotte Hornets. But
listen, if you're a team, you get the deal done. You get the deal done.
Oh,
that's all I'm saying. Yeah, look, I think Kenny Atkinson handled it in an unprofessional way. But if you're a team and you hire somebody, you get the deal done.
But Doug, this is a change in heart from you. We can go back last week and talk about what you said. It's not embarrassing for the Hornets. Now it is.
When we're talking about it, we'll see. We'll see how much of the staff they retain, and if it really was about.
Okay.
If the hangup was about a couple of $1 million here and there for some assistant coaches, then yeah, absolutely, it's embarrassing for this organization.
I see that. So that's the part, right? Like he was saying, look, we had a blip on the radar where Kenny Atkinson backs out and stays with Golden State. I mean, but yeah, I'm just. I thought this was something we agreed on last week, and so I don't like the assistant coaches thing. The Hornets deserve criticism for not wanting to pay league average for that. Like that's a real problem. But the whole, like, my family wanted to stay in Golden State.
I don't buy that. I'm skeptical.
Yeah.
I'm skeptical. Oh wait, what did I feel like I messed that word up. Skeptical? No, that's right. Skeptical.
No, that's it. I didn't know what you were messing up.
I said skeptical. I'm skeptical. I've got my conspiracy hat on.
Okay.
I just don't buy it. I don't buy the family stuff. I don't buy that Clifford was part of this process early on.
Okay, from Kenny's point of view, you don't buy it.
Right.
All right. I don't know where we are. coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast. We already talked about the Miles Bridges updates. We're gonna continue to keep you updated on that as the week goes on. But James Booknight, some bad news surrounding the second-year player out of UConn. We'll get to that in the next segment. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. You can find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NHL playoffs and Major League Baseball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sport wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. BetOnline.net is the fastest and the easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. You can head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. Bet online, where the game starts. We'll update you on James Booknight coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Is Locked On Hornets.
And the Google description here says, on contracts made before June, where the wheat is deliverable in December, either wheat of the grades, named or numbered, B shares Batik of New York, N.B.A. So take that for what you will. It's a lot of information I just threw at you. I apologize.
What was the grade?
The wheat was graded C-.
Let's get him on.
It's time for more of the Locked On Hornets podcast.
We talked about James Booknight and how that hire of Steve Clifford might affect him next year. Didn't think it was necessarily going to be good for James Booknight. Well, this news certainly isn't going to be good either. We just got news of this, I believe, last night or maybe in the afternoon after the press conference. The Hornets released in a statement that guard James Booknight underwent successful surgery yesterday, so I think that would have been 2 days ago, to repair a tendon in his fifth digit on his right hand. Fifth digit on his right hand. That's the pinky, right?
Well, I mean, I guess it kind of has to be, because if it was a thumb, they would have just said thumb, right?
I think so. Did they feel weird putting pinky in an official statement, or is it the thumb? And how does that
like, oh, we can't put pinky. This is the National Basketball Association. This is a press release. We cannot put the word pinky in a press release. All right, I'm looking it up here. So here's the definition of fifth digit by the Free Dictionary, so you know you can trust it. Little finger, the finger farthest from the thumb, the pinky, the pinky.
Nailed it.
One with an IE, one with a Y. That's kind of a visual thing. Musculus abductor digiti minimi manus. The abductor muscle of the little finger. Minimus, the fifth digit, the little finger or little toe.
You got to, if that process, hey, how do we type this up? You have to just copy and paste what the trainer or medical official doctor is saying there. It's like, hey, no, we're just going to copy and paste it. It might be a little weird. Fifth digit, is it the thumb? Is it the pinky? Is there a Y? Is there an IE? We're just going to copy and paste this so people understand it's the fifth digit and we're not lying.
I feel like they should have said that he had successful surgery on his musculus abductor digiti minimi manus.
I would have understood it a lot better had they just put that out there. It's Locked On Hornets finishing up. Yeah, not good news, though, for James Booknight. Going to miss Summer League. This is somebody that feels like he needs Summer League, right?
Needed it.
Not great. We experienced this. I think we've experienced this with multiple, first or second year players.
Well, you know who this feels like. You know what this feels like.
Yes, I do. And I would agree with this. 100%.
This feels like the situation that we all experienced with Malik Monk.
It does feel like that.
Where things just sort of found him.
Yeah.
And things, some outside of his control, some inside his control, prevented him from developing in the way that I feel like a lot of us felt like he should have developed.
So James Booknight, last year's Summer League, the lasting memory of that is kind of his matchup against Davion Mitchell, where
Getting
Mitchell
locked up.
ate him up. Yeah. I think it went better after that. Like, the actual story is he had the one bad game against Davion, but then performed better in Summer League after that.
I was happy. I mean, that was sort of the headline, but I was happy with Bookknight out of Summer League.
No, now Malik Monk, the bad things that would continue to happen to him throughout like his first, 3-4 years with the Hornets, he had COVID right at that time where he was gearing up for the regular season. So it hits him in preseason. I think he only plays a couple of games. I thought he played well, and then 2 preseason games were taken away from him. He talked about needing to catch his breath out of the rotation at the beginning of the season. That was a weird dynamic between James Borrego and Malik Monk. We also had the injuries that kept him out of Summer League, I believe, maybe 1 year or so. And then there was the time where he didn't play. I think he chose not to play. PJ Washington, remember, he didn't play because he was injured coming out of the draft. I think that's true. I think I have that right as well. It's always weird to figure out exactly what took place at these times. But I don't think PJ played because of that injury that he suffered, and they were just making sure that he wasn't going to get further injured his rookie year coming into the league. Now here's James Bookknight, second year, going to be out of Summer League.
Well, it's particularly unfortunate, frustrating, because you've got a new coach. You got Steve Clifford, who's certainly going to have his eyes on Vegas, and he'll watch some. I'm sure he'll watch Bookknight film from the limited time that he got in the NBA and also his G League stuff. So it's not like he has nothing to go on, but it certainly would have been nice for Clifford to see the improvements that Bookknight has been working on in the offseason. Now does not get an opportunity. We don't know how. I don't think I've seen any indication as to how he broke this finger. And this press release was savvily, I don't know if that's a word, but savvily released after the press conference with Kupchak, so we didn't get an opportunity to really even ask about this. Certainly, we will. But would it make you feel better, Walker? Would it make you feel better if you knew that he broke his musculus abductor digiti minimi manus, hooping it up, playing a little, not even playing a pickup game, but I'm saying like training, getting ready for the season?
I mean, no, I don't necessarily care about that stuff because injuries happen all over the place. It's not like injuries only happen to athletes when they're doing something in the lawn, or they're playing whatever. Like, I don't care. People are allowed to live their lives outside of basketball. If he broke whatever you just said, doing something outside of basketball, it doesn't mean that he's not working on his game hard enough. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't care if something happened to his pinky.
Well, that's not what I was saying. That's not what I was indicating, because
you're saying, would I feel better if it was a basketball related injury, right?
Well, I think there is an element of, like, we've had guys before play random pickup games and get hurt in the offseason. It's like, you're an important part of this organization. Like, if you do it within the confines of getting better for the season in some kind of protected way, great. But if you're out there just playing hoops and anything can happen, that seems reckless.
But people play in the Drew League. People play pickup all the time. I mean, you can't keep hoopers from hooping, right? That's what they do.
Yeah. Can't keep a hooper from hooping.
It's Bookknight, baby. Got to stay on the court. It's where he lives.
But you can, actually. The doctor has, with a successful surgery, kept the hooper from hooping, at least in Summer League. It's tough. It's honestly tough. But on the plus side for Bookknight, or if you're a fan of Bookknight and the Charlotte Hornets, if that's where the Venn diagram meets, then this is, at least you can take some comfort in knowing that he most likely will not be included in any kind of trade discussions at the end of the season.
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, we'll see. Yeah, that's a good point. All right. We have NBA free agency coming up this week. We also have a couple of the moves. So just to be official, the Hornets.
Antonio Daniels coming up.
That's right. So Hornets picked up the qualifying offer for Miles Bridges and Cody Martin, just to let people know about that. We do have Antonio Daniels coming up. Doug had a chance to speak with the former NBA player, the former 4th overall pick, which I completely forgot about, out of Bowling Green. AD player that I think would have been pretty good in today's day and age. But you had a chance to talk with him about
Antonio
Miles Bridges free agency. Yep. I think I hope that's what you called him. I haven't listened to it yet.
He would. I only had 10 minutes. So this is the thing with Locked on NBA. He comes on a few of these shows because he's a host. He hosts a show every day. I've got to hear Give and Go on Sirius XM NBA from 1 to 4 p.m. Eastern time. So he's always paying attention to these kinds of things. So he gave us some great insight as a former player on Miles Bridges and LaMelo Ball and Steve Clifford, that relationship. Cool. So check that out. I think we're going to release that. I think it's already on the YouTube page. So if you want to go check it out, head over to YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. But we're going to put it on the actual podcast feed tomorrow, Thursday, the deadline day.
If you refuse to watch it and you only listen to the podcast, you'll be getting it tomorrow, along with a couple of Richard Stayman segments where he recaps the NBA draft. Well, I think maybe put one in there tomorrow, depending on more Hornets breaking news.
Bryce McGowan, we finally figured out a little bit about him.
That's right. You know, it's funny. A new addition we haven't been able to talk about because so many other things have been happening in Charlotte Hornets land. Needless to say, we're going to keep you updated on everything surrounding Charlotte Hornets land. We appreciate you hopping on with us here on the Locked On Hornets podcast, making us your first listen every day. For your second listen, get up to date on the latest news and rumors in the NBA in just 30 minutes with Locked On NBA. Locked On NBA, your daily NBA update in just 30 minutes. Lots to come this week, including tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Yeah.
Perfect.